In the summer of 2010, I was about halfway through rabbinical school and trying to decide how I would spend my summer. I knew that the next summer, before my final year of school, I'd be able to apply for a full-time internship. But I wasn't quite sure what experience I wanted that summer. Some classmates were working as chaplains at nursing homes or hospitals. Some were going to Israel to study, and one who was a bit cash poor decided she needed a break and she was going to tend bar for the summer. It's a little like chaplaincy. As I perused my options, I came across an email detailing a new fellowship through the Museum of Jewish Heritage, the Holocaust Museum, at the very southern tip of Manhattan. It had a funny sounding acronym, FASB, which stood for Fellowships at Auschwitz for the Study of Professional Ethics. I was intrigued, and so I read on. FASB's mission is to promote ethical leadership and responsibility among professionals, those with the authority to impact all segments of society. FASB's distinctive approach is to examine the roles and behavior of individual professionals in Germany and elsewhere between 1933 and 1945 as an initial framework for approaching ethical responsibility in those professions today. Essentially, fellows, graduate students, would be split into several different cohorts based on their field of study and go through this experience together. In 2010, the whole fellowship was only a year old. In their first summer, there was a cohort of medical students and law students. The second summer, 2010, they added a cohort of students studying to be clergy. Fortuitous for me. Over the next 15 years, they have added cohorts for students studying journalism and business and design and technology. The fellowship included an intensive study with these cohorts in New York City, followed by a 2-week trip to Poland and Germany, including a visit to Oswiecim, Poland, a small town that was home to the concentration camp Auschwitz. Before I applied, I had a conversation with the creator of FASB, a seasoned Jewish gentleman who began by explaining why he felt the study of professional ethics was so important. He said, I spent a lot of time in my life learning about the Holocaust, mostly why it happened, the historical or socioeconomic, ideological reasons, but not a lot of time learning how it happened. How the upstanding professional members of German society, whose professions included various ethical and moral codes, were unable or unwilling to be guided by those codes and ethics and morals as they watched their friends and neighbors disappear. He continued, I decided I wanted to bring students together of all religions and cultural backgrounds before they went out into the world and have them study the breakdown of ethics and morals then, so that they could help prevent something similar from happening now. Needless to say, I knew what I was going to do that summer. I applied and was accepted as a fellow in the inaugural clergy cohort of FASB. And it was the single most impactful and transformational experience I had in all of rabbinical school. In Berlin, we visited the home of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was a German Lutheran pastor, neo-Orthodox theologian, and anti-Nazi dissident, known for his staunch and very vocal resistance to the Nazi dictatorship. He not only wrote and spoke publicly in dissent, but strongly urged his church council to create policies to protect and affirm the sacred status of Jews and push back steadily against the manipulation of religion in service of the Nazi agenda. Do and dare what is right, not swayed by the whim of the moment, he wrote in his work titled Ethics. Bravely take hold of the real, not dallying now with what might be. Not in the flight of ideas, but only in action is freedom. Make up your mind and come out of the tempest of living. God's command is enough, and your faith in God to sustain you. Then at last, freedom will welcome your spirit amidst great rejoicing. Bonhoeffer's story doesn't end well, though it's hardly a surprise. He was arrested and imprisoned many times and then executed without trial in April of 1945. During his life, many considered him a radical, too much. It's not that bad out there, but just be quiet, endure it, and it will pass. His legacy, however, reveals him as a modern prophet of sorts, unwilling to stay silent, unwilling to accept a terrifying new status quo, and ultimately willing to pay the steepest price. I sat in his house, a modest space filled with light and books. And I wondered if I would have dared to do the same. Over the last 15 years since that summer, there has been no single moment in time where I truly understood the lessons of that fellowship until now. It was hypothetical, mostly an exercise, an intellectual quest, a what if, or even just a study of the past. But I fear we have reached a critical juncture. The storm that has been brewing for the better part of the last decade and beyond is now raining down fire and brimstone, and we cannot simply hope that it will pass and just keep our heads down. I'll admit, confess on this day of atonement that I was hoping beyond hope that it would just pass, that it wouldn't be as terrible as some predicted, that Project 2025 wasn't really a legitimate playbook for the future of our country, that the war in Israel and Gaza would end with all hostages returned without the complete destruction of the people and land of Gaza, that we wouldn't be fearful to leave the country on vacation or even cross state lines, and that we wouldn't be declining rapidly rather than rising and thriving. While I am reticent to create too many parallels to the Dietrich time, Bonhoeffer time, I am looking for him. I am yearning for his moral clarity and unwavering belief that his purpose was to use his voice as loudly as he could to remind his community and his compatriots of their moral responsibility, come what may. I see shades and whispers of his conviction in some of my colleagues, Jewish and non-Jewish clergy alike. But the loudest religious voices in this country seem to egg on the immorality that has engulfed it, joyfully discarding moral conviction for power. When the door to authoritarianism is open, it's not just politicians who run through. Though deeply concerned and fearful of what else is to come, I am not willing to cede the moral ground. I am not willing to throw up my hands in the air and only say, this too shall pass. I am not willing to give up or shut up, and I hope you aren't either. This is far from the first time and far from the last time we will face a moral crisis. It is the plight of our humanity. But we have a guide and wisdom of our tradition. For every age, a new pharaoh arises, sometimes of our own making. The great moral voices of our tradition always lived in times of trouble. The prophets, otherwise known as the social pariahs of their time, were a constant mirror for the children of Israel, reflecting their actions and deeds back, whether they wanted to see them or not. The prophets weren't just a mouthpiece of God, but the reality check, the reminder of who the people promised to be. The involvement of God in the moral struggle imparts a quality of urgency and passion that is unique to Judaism. For I know their sorrows, says God in Exodus. It shall come to pass when one cries out unto me that I shall hear. Hence the hysterical tone of the prophets. Injustice cannot be tolerated. Cruelty, human suffering, should shake the foundations of society. Who is surprised to learn that the people didn't really listen to the prophets? These were mostly men of great character, chosen by God, dedicated to God, but also dedicated to the moral health of the people. And though rarely thanked and often reviled, they served a vital role. Abraham Joshua Heschel famously wrote, "Above all, the prophets reminded us of the moral state of the people. Few are guilty, but all are responsible." On this day of Yom Kippur, our Day of Atonement, dedicated to serving as a mirror for each of us, we will engage with the words of the prophet Isaiah. Cry with full throat, without restraint. Raise your voice like the ram's horn. This is the fast I desire, to unlock fetters of wickedness and untie the cords of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, to break off every yoke. It is to share your bread with the hungry and to take the wretched poor into your home. When you see the naked, to clothe them, to not ignore your kin. Then shall your light burst like the dawn, and your healing spring up quickly. Your righteousness shall march before you, and the presence of God shall be your rear guard. For Isaiah, and therefore God, the choice is clear and the reward great. Take care of each other. This is our purpose. This is righteousness, justice. And Isaiah didn't just know this or chat about it with his friends. He demanded that Klal Yisrael, the community of Israel, listen. There's no real surprise that this particular job did not stand the test of time. A few thousand years later, we are profitless, rarely a mirror to be found, and it shows. We were long ago proclaimed a kingdom of priests, and let us also be a kingdom of prophets. Tuned into moral clarity, unafraid to be the mouthpiece and the mirror, to not ally ourselves with a cause du jour, but to realign with our moral tradition and responsibility, to choose our values over the false binary of us versus them, as if there are ever only two sides to any challenge. I am so tired of that binary that disregards our responsibility of Jews to be moral leaders, beholden to justice, not to a state or a party, beholden to ethics, not what is cool or popular, beholden to God. To believe in the necessity of a Jewish state does not mean one cannot be critical, or one should not be critical, especially when there are clear and present violations of our values. To have difficulty with the existence of a Jewish state does not automatically mean someone is self-hating or anti-Semitic. To believe in a Jewish state does not preclude us from caring that there are thousands of starving Palestinians who are deserving of our empathy and compassion. Neither empathy nor compassion are a finite resource. To believe and to love America doesn't mean we have to like our government. Sometimes it means we fight against what's happening with every breath we can muster. Loving this country is about believing in an idea that freedom is a human right deserved by all. To dissent, to attend peaceful marches, to sign petitions, to vote is being a patriot. And I'm ready to reclaim that word and our flag while we're at it. It's not all or nothing. It never has been. And when we are scared or worried, it's easy for us to buy into that all too simplistic black or white notion. But we must resist, keep resisting, follow a moral voice, the voice informed by our tradition that cares about all people. It doesn't just exist in the echo chamber of self-interest. Ruth Bader Ginsburg of blessed memory said, "The greatest menace to freedom is an inert people." Maybe we do have a few modern prophets. We stand here on this day of judgment, praying for a place in the book of life, cataloging our behaviors, our choices, pushing ourselves to hear the call and return. And this is where we begin, understanding ourselves, deciding to use our voices, deciding to enact our values in even the smallest ways every day. I know we feel powerless and disheartened. I know it's difficult to figure out what one person can do to affect any change. I know it's easier to doom scroll, distract ourselves, and the life of a prophet does not seem ideal. But we don't have to do it on our own. We can strengthen our moral character together and raise our voices together, trusting and believing in what we can do as a community. We cannot and should not all strive to be Bonhoeffer, but it's time to engage our moral voices in whatever authentic way we can, to match words with actions, to pledge allegiance to the values and ideals we cherish, and demand that we return to them. Rabbi Sidney Schwartz taught, if the Exodus created an ethnic tribal consciousness among Jews, it was Sinai that invested them in an understanding of their mission in the world. Jewish existence was to be based on bringing tzedek and mishpat, righteousness and justice, to all God's children. The covenant forged at Sinai committed the Jewish people to a life of ethics and values. It was the spiritual and moral genesis of the Jewish people. And it was powerfully connected to the Jewish people's understanding of what God wants of us. The Torah's teaching about acting with compassion, protecting the stranger in one's midst, pursuing peace and truth shaped the Jewish notion of how one should live in the world. And our prophets promulgated this message to each generation following. Let us honor the commitment we all made while standing together at Sinai. Let us be that kingdom of prophets. Gemar Tov.